when we talk about trauma, we have to acknowledge that our children are equipped, and all of us again, when we get into a place of fear, the part of the brain that is the fear receptor, we go into a fight or flight response. And this is when I gave that example of that child that's running out of the classroom. What do? We have to recognize that that is not about bad behavior. This is a deep primal reaction to feeling like you're being threatened. And again, it's the perception of the child, what they are thinking, what they are seeing is not the reality of the situation, but in their mind, it is the reality. So we have to hold their truth as well. And so for a child that might be fighting in the playground or running out of the classroom, get back to the understanding of fight or flight. If a child is hyper aroused, this just means that they are in an increase of a psychological and physiological tension within their bodies. It will manifest into a reduction of pain tolerance. These are the kids that will do all sorts of things and not even think about it. We say, wow, doesn't that hurt? And they're like, no. They have increased anxiety. They have an exaggerated startle response. I mean, how many of you all are working with kids or raising kids who are completely exaggerated in their response system? They're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. You're like, what's the drama? I got a drama queen here. But they are completely exaggerated. And it's not that they're trying to be dramatic, it's they're in a different state that they go to these extremes. Um, they go into, their whole list here. The opposite is the hypo-aroused. And this is a decrease in the physiological or psychological tension marked by effects as emotional indifference. The kid that just says, whatever, or whatever. The child that just looks like they don't care. The child that sits there and does nothing. This might be the child that actually doesn't act out in the classroom, but it is probably the child that needs the most attention because they have completely shut down. And so you can have a child that looks very depressed, very hopeless. This is the kid that you encourage to try. Well, why don't you just try one math problem? Instead of 20, just try one. And they're like, I can't do it. Or they just sit there and like you don't even exist. How many of you all have that? Where you have the hypo-aroused child and they're like, you can't, it's like you're talking to a wall. There's nothing there. So we have to first see what this is about. It's that fight or flight response. And as we put this on the spectrum of regulation and dysregulation, we've got dysregulation on the left-hand side, more of the hyper-aroused one, right? The one where you have the child that is just out of control. They're unable to focus. They can't adhere to the rules. This is the aggressive child, that fight mode. They're resistant. What I want you to see here is how these behaviors fit into the category of dysregulation, but more specifically into the category of hyperarousal. On the flip side, then, is the child that is shut down, dysregulated but hypo-aroused, tardy, like they can't even get to class on time. This is the kid that has to walk 20 feet down the hallway and they're still late. Again, it's not that they are just being bad. Their body systems are so shut down to get there. It takes all the energy in their body. The child who's absent all the time, the one who just avoids tasks. You all may know that the child that is a master at avoidance. Maybe you're that teacher that checks in and says, hey, Billy, you got a book report due in 4 weeks. Have you picked your book out? And Billy goes, yeah, I got it. The next week, you're like, okay, Billy, have you read the book? Billy says, I finished it in one night. Okay. And Billy says, then I'm ready to go for this. The next week, you continually check in with this child. And by the time the book report is due, what's the reality? No, the kid never even got the book. Now, was he lying? I don't think so. Our kids create their own reality. They live in a non-reality in order to avoid. It's a deep level of fear. I mean, we can argue the point. Yes, they're lying. But if we deal with just the lying, then we're missing the point that this child is so overwhelmed and they are creating within their own mind this sort of magical world that exists so they're not in trouble. It's a way for them to step out of the fear and be able to soothe themselves and be able to help themselves regulate. Obviously, it doesn't work for them in the long term. So that's why I want you to see so much of our kids, what they do, we see it as bad behavior. But if we can start putting it into these two categories, we can start understanding that it's just a state of overwhelm, it's fear, it's pain, it's loss. What we want to then do is move our kids from that state of dysregulation into the center here. So wherever your child fits in, and you know what, some of y'all, you may have kids who have both. Absolutely. We've got kids who have a little bit of hyper-arousal. 1 millisecond later, they may be hypo-aroused. These are the kids that switch back and forth. So I want you to see that this might actually be the child that's diagnosed as what, bipolar, right? They're depressed 1 minute, they're manic the next. So they're switching back and forth from the different states of from dysregulation. Either way, our job then and our role in this child's life is to help get them regulated, help them get regulated. There's a lot of different techniques that we can do to make this happen. But ultimately, our goal then is to have a child who is what? Who is responsive, engaged, focused, and calm. Now, are we going to try to work at this level? Are we going to say, Billy, calm down, Billy. Billy, I need you to pay attention. Billy, focus, focus, Billy. No, 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 and no. We've done that. What we have to do is work here at this level of regulation. If we help Billy get regulated through the context of relationship, being able to take care of those lower needs, the safety, the self-esteem, the relationship, the love, the physical needs, to help that child get those needs met, then that child becomes regulated. And you know what the byproduct of that is? Well, then you have a child who can be able to stay calm, who is focused and has all these qualities. So what I really want you to see here, we've been going at this the wrong way. We've been working at this level, at the behavioral level, trying to get rid of these behaviors. It's not about the behaviors. It's all about right here, that spectrum of regulation and dysregulation. This is where we start approaching it to make a difference with our kids.